Okay, so now you have all learned about strengths and what they are, and resilience and what that is, and now we're going to try to apply it from both a spiritual, faith-based, Christian-based perspective, as well as from a science-based perspective. This is an actual kind of applying of all things that we talked about before in terms of the 24 character strengths, but also how to build resilience a little bit more practically. And again, this can be applied specifically to individual cases as needed. So strength-based parenting is about managing negativity and amplifying our strengths for greater parenting so that we can have flourishing and thriving families. Our entire goal, and I think the title that you all got in preparing for today, was to build fortified, resilient relationships and homes and communication in our families and in our parenting. And so again, this is kind of where we're going to start this second half of our day today and learn more about how to apply those things as we've talked about them so far. The first thing that we need to do, of course, is to build our homes on rock and not to build our homes on sand. This is taken from Matthew 7:24-27. Where the story is that the wise person builds their house on the rock, and so the rock obviously being Christ, being God, and that when the winds and the waves and the storms crash against it, obviously symbolism for the challenges that we have in life, that house does not collapse, that house does not fall down, that house becomes fortified and strengthened. And if the house truly symbolizes a small church, all our homes is a small church, this is what we're aiming for. Thank you so much. And this is why, again, I'm going to be talking mostly from the spiritual perspective in this one, and also from the psychological, because we need to build both together to have our house built on a rock and not to fall down on the sand when the storms of life hit. We can do this again through science and faith working together. Those two don't contradict each other if we are putting God in the center and God as the anchor. So again, positive psychology is the scientific study of optimal human functioning, and our goal is to better understand and apply how we can apply certain factors to help humans, to help communities, to help parents, to help fill in the blank, to thrive and to reach their full potential. So again, this positive psychology and resilience spans many different groups and many different disciplines. In fact, it can be used in psychotherapy, for example, to instill hope and meaning and healing. You can use it in your job as a parent to educate and enhance your child's life in terms of increasing their intrinsic motivations, to improve their affect, to increase their creativity and things like that. We can use this in work to increase our involvement in work, increase something called flow, which is being really engaged and engrossed in the work that you're doing as well. We also can use it to make genuine contributions to our work, enhance things like altruism in our communications, in our society, enhance moral character, and again in our families we can increase the dynamics of love, parenthood, and commitment. However, sometimes we are stuck in what is called a negativity bias. And a negativity bias is a little bit of a bent, and some people really bend in this direction, but this is meant to sometimes that negative kind of mindset that we have and mind frame that we have, that can be good for survival but not for thriving. And so we often lean in the negative direction, things kind of spiral in the negative direction. And for example, if you think of a window that is not clean, a clean window wouldn't attract your attention, but a dirty one would, and you would want to do something about that to clean that window. And so kids sometimes, they will magnify their struggles and their difficulties and their problems, and this can create a lot of issues with conflict and with anxiety and with stress. And so again, we use this for survival, but we can't thrive unless we build strengths. So yes, we can focus on the negative to see what's wrong. The window's dirty, I need to clean the window. And the clean window is not going to attract my attention. But then it's important to also build strengths from there, again, not just to fix, but to help kids to grow. So strength-based parenting involves both talents and strengths. And we've already talked about the difference between talents and strengths already, but let's delve into this again and a little bit deeper. Talents, again, are based on performance. Again, if I practice basketball or piano or whatever it is, the talent that I have, anything really, if I practice it more and more, it will be enhanced. And my growth in it will be observable. I'll be a better basketball player, I'll play the piano more fluently, and this can be applied to any of those different arenas. But if I don't use those talents, they will get lost. So in 10, 15 years, I get too busy, I don't play basketball anymore, I'm not gonna be as good at it as I was when I was practicing every day. Whereas character strength, again, have a moral component to it. They are more internal, they are included things like grit and curiosity and courage and humor and kindness. And these, again, traits are very much universal, and they are, again, associated with things like positive well-being, positive emotions, persistence, confidence, greatest satisfaction in life, and it can lead to better behavior as well. So again, it is in our capacity as parents to help us to grow our kids in these areas. Again, there's 24 of these character strengths. They can be generalizable across settings and time. We've talked about this in the first talk. And they are morally valued and found kind of universally, and are very versatile too, and can be applied to work, to parenting, to kids, to adults, to everything in that regard. So again, just to kind of refresh your memory from earlier, here are your 24 character strengths, and we're going to use them for strength-based parenting. So what is strength-based parenting? Basically, it is to maximize those talents that we talked about, and to show how we can leverage those talents to address weaknesses. We're going to notice their strengths, maybe even keep a strengths diary. Today I noticed you being courageous. Today I noticed you did really well with love of learning. Today you did really well with this. Maybe writing down 3 strengths daily that you could use and help your kids at least start with those top 3 or 5 strengths and finding ways they're using them and how to enhance them in their everyday life. So that's something really tangible that we can do. And then you can map out the strengths for your family. How does that connect to mom's strengths, dad's strengths, sibling strengths, to your community, to your service, to connecting those strengths to seeing where they're being manifested and utilized. Again, a really tangible, easy way to see the growth and progress of each of those strengths. Some things that we can, should and should not do. We should not lavish our kids with excessive and empty praise. So just praising them just for the sake of praising them. Your feedback needs to be real and genuine and based on your strengths. So whatever that strength is, and you're noticing that strength in them, enhance that. But not just empty praises or superficial praises. It really should be, as much as you can, tailor-made to your child. So don't paintbrush everybody in your family with the same strengths, because again, there are 24 of them, but your order is unique to you. So don't generalize the strengths from mom to dad to each kid, and all the kids are painted with the same paintbrush. It doesn't work that way. Also, don't ignore problems, and instead show them what they're actually good at, and use what they're good at to overturn the things that are negative. Give them a good solid identity about what they can improve on, and help them to grow in that arena as well. What you can do also that's really beneficial is to help them to calm anxieties rather than nagging or being defensive, but be calm and being able to engage them more in that perspective. You also want to do more fruitful negotiations to give them some autonomy, and obviously as they get older they're going to need more autonomy, but also sometimes some more rules. But you're also focusing on their strengths in this regard, and you're harnessing their tools for greater happiness and well-being and thriving. So that's what's really important as well. You also can't be an absent parent, all right? Absent parenting or inconsistent parenting is not going to help. And I'm an advocate more for quality than quantity. You could spend 100 hours with your kid and it not being quality, or you could spend 4 or 5 hours. I advocate time as well also. But it is important to have good quality connected parenting. So connected parenting, again, you're creating kind of rituals for your family that fosters connection. Maybe you're having family meetings regularly, which are different than family recreation time where you can build. You're going to help your kids to negotiate, right? Because they're going to go into the real world and have negotiation skills. You can teach them things like cooking and how to eat healthy foods, to resist an overfull schedule or overindulgences in general, whether it's video games or food or spending time on their phones, whatever it is. Limiting electronics is really important. Look at your children's friends. Do they have similar values as your children and your family? That's going to help the situation tremendously, because you know you're sending them out with people that are similar to them. Again, biblically we talk about that as being equally yoked. You want to pay attention to your child's, again, peer relationships. Hold those family meetings regularly. Those are different than family recreation time. Family meetings is to work out any logistical issues or troubles that people are having, or struggles with everything. Maybe they're fighting with their sibling about who's using the bathroom when, for example, and that can create a lot of conflict. So again, teaching them to negotiate through those moments is really important. Ultimately, you're going to be focusing on your values, and you're going to teach more self-control rather than just punitive kind of punishment type things, right? So self-control is a really important skill. There's my favorite picture again. But here, again, you're focusing on how to help these children to grow their potential, to have positive communication with them that is validating of their emotion, that is affectionate, that is harmonious, that is happy, caring. And all these have been shown to alter brain activity and brain growth for the positive. So being validating, but again, not having it be empty validating, to truly validate what they're doing. Again, your praise should not be generic. If you're going to look at strengths, you got to look at their specific strengths and notice when those strengths are being utilized, and to praise around those strengths. You want to praise for character. I saw you were good and brave with your sibling. You stood up against the bullies for one of the neighborhood kids that was being bullied. So you saw these things live in action, and you bring them to attention so that they too can notice when they're using these strengths. Also notice if their strengths have been blocked by something, overused. Maybe they're creative, but creative all the time and not focusing on things like church or chores or homework. So believe it or not, strengths can also be overused, and anything that is overused can be negative as well. So if I'm daydreaming all the time, I'm not focusing on the things that I need to do, even though creativity is a good positive character strength, right? So make sure that they're not overused as well. You are the gauge of where these strengths should be. Praise the process, not just the outcome. If we are only looking for the A, you are missing all the progress that it took to get that A. So praise along the way. I see that you're studying hard. I see that you're making effort. I see that you went to school tutoring. I see that you are studying with a buddy and they're keeping you accountable. Notice these things and pay attention to them. So if I could address anything here, it would be to be mindful as parents as to what your kids are doing, although I know that is hard and we're all stretched for time. So be your child's greatest advocate. Be patient with them, like this picture, that's why it's back up here. Know their potential and where they're going to come forward to in the future. You may ask them, where do you see yourself in a year? Or where do you see yourself in 10 years? And they'll say, I don't know. I don't have 20/20 vision. I don't know what's coming yet. Why? Because oftentimes hindsight is what 20/20 is. And so we don't always have to protect them from consequences unless those consequences are dangerous or harmful to them in some way. But sometimes consequences teach us things, right? I mean, all of us here, if I ask for a show of hands, all of us have learned after the fact from something that we may have, if we had a little bit more wisdom or discernment, we could have seen it coming. But oftentimes, in hindsight, we see it. And so from that process, they can learn growth from the things that they are learning along the way. So growth is a process, right? Even the most giant redwood trees in California started with a tiny seed, and they grow gradually until they became those giant redwoods, right? Same with a butterfly. In fact, when the butterfly transforms, it looks nothing like its former past self, right? It used to crawl on the ground, it used to stick to the ground, then it went inside this cocoon, and then it came out as this amazing butterfly that is transformed. My students are tired of this slide, right? Because these three things are deeply connected. Our thoughts, our actions, and our feelings are deeply connected. So when we change any one of these things, the other two are changed. When we're stuck in any one of these things, we're stuck in the other two as well. So work to transform thoughts, emotions, and behaviors at the same time. And transforming one will oftentimes transform the other. And we also have to look at our kids from a biological aspect. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Where are they? Where is their brain development at? I teach a development course this semester, so we talk a lot about brain development. They're not going to be the same place as a 30 or 40-year-old when they're only 15 or 12, right? So we're focusing on, again, changing things biologically, psychologically, socially, and spiritually, and also through our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. So think about, what are the goals for your family? What are your plans? Do they align with God's will? Are we implementing God's will? Are we maintaining God's will once we've deciphered what that is? Are your goals aligning, not just in the beginning of the new year, but throughout our lifestyle? God's will for the family is we are the stewards to represent God. We are the ambassadors from God to teach our kids through our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions what we are supposed to do. We have to kind of work together to understand God's vision for the family, but each person's individual vision as well. God, and again, using our strengths, we can identify what God's will is for that person's life, but also the family as a whole. Again, we want to be productive members of society, and He has a unique vision for all of us, and that's why our strengths are unique. All 24 of those strengths are in each one of us, but they're all in a different order, meaning we are unique, and my gifts are to be used by me, and your gifts are to be used by you, and the family has a set of gifts. So that is important as well. So map out your journey as a family, map out where God wants you to go, how He wants you to go there, and how to have to obey God and to always reach your destination. Have a vision. Be patient with God's plan. It's going to take time to transform into that butterfly. I think I read somewhere that a butterfly takes 21 days in the cocoon before it comes out of its cocoon as a butterfly. And again, just like that egg example, it doesn't look like it's moving or functioning, but it's going to come out after a certain amount of time. So we want to create a vision for our family. We want to savor the moments that we have. We want to seek help. We want to problem solve. If we fall, we keep getting back up. We learn from our mistakes. We believe in ourselves because God gave us a purpose. And again, to have gratitude for what we already have. Know that God's promises take time. All right, look throughout the Bible. We're going to take a quick glance through the Bible. You're going to see that God's promises take time. Look at Noah. It took 120 years to build the ark, and he was 600 when the flood covered the earth. Abraham, 25 years was when he was told by God that he would have a son, and he was 100 when he had that son. Okay? God's promises take time. Who of us would have lost hope by then? Where are my strengths? I don't see the fruits of those. Joseph, he waited 13 years before becoming second in command, and you know all the struggles he went through, sold by his brothers, betrayed by Potiphar's wife. He was imprisoned, remained in prison, forgotten in prison. But then at the end, he said, but as for you, you meant it for evil against me, and God meant it for good. Moses, his plan seemed straightforward. Get them out of Egypt, cross the Red Sea, get to the Promised Land. Was it straightforward? It was not straightforward. Our plans are not straightforward, and God directs our steps as we go through those plans. So he faced plagues, he faced Pharaoh, he faced destruction, and people turning against him, and getting the commandments, and then breaking the commandments, and all of that, and didn't end up making it into the Promised Land. But the Promised Land is still there. 500 years later, the children of Israel finally settled into the Promised Land and made it their own. God's promises take time. In the New Testament, we all know about Christ being presented to the temple, and before that, Elizabeth and Zechariah were in old age, like Sarah and Abraham. When St. John the Baptist was born, Simeon waited 200 years to see Christ before he departed, and the paralyzed man coming up in a few weeks waited 38 years to be healed. And even in nature, we know that things take time to grow. Again, those redwood trees, up to 40 years. Human babies take time to formulate. Whales, giraffes, elephants, all of these take time to grow. excuse me, but God's promises will occur. And being confident in this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in us will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. But things come in the fullness of time. You don't notice the small things if you're moving fast, right? And so this is why we need to slow down and savor, because the Bible talks a lot about this fullness of time. Think of a time in your life when you wanted something, and if you had wanted it and it came earlier than when it actually came, would you have been ready? Strengths take time to grow, and this is why it has to happen in the fullness of time. And again, science and faith combine here and have the same message. We don't notice things if we are rushing. So slow down and savor, have gratitude, and you will notice the changes slowly, like that butterfly transforming. Patience is not the ability to wait, but how you act while you're waiting. Are you grumpy? Are you, God, where are you? Are you, hurry up, Lord, I've been waiting for a while, right? Think about, again, that paralyzed man that we're going to talk about in a few weeks, sitting by the pool. If he was rushed in healing, he would not have met Christ. He would have gone in the pool, and he would not have met Christ. So in rushing, we may miss the whole point. And so slow down and savor and take the journey for what it is. And know that he who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us, for him shall be with us freely to give us of all things. He will give us of all things, and we will experience God's goodness in many situations. So we will experience the goodness of God in the land of the living, and we should focus on God's goodness and his character, not on hurrying and grumbling. We also don't want to lose faith and go our own way. I'm sure we've all done this too, where we have tried to go our own way and seen how awry something can go when we try to do things in our own speed and in our own direction without God's will. So in this section, we're going to talk about not losing faith and not going our own way and waiting for when God's timing is correct. So again, we want to create a goal and plan in humility. Big goals need to be broken down into small goals. Whatever career, let's say, your child wants to go into, break it down into the goals that they can accomplish today so that in 10, 15, 20 years, they can get to that career goal. Your goals have to be achievable, and you have to walk towards that goal every day. So you should have both short-term and long-term goals. And even when we talk about things clinically, that's exactly how we address them. Long-term goals and then short-term goals in that regard. We also want to have ambition in putting God first and not ourselves first. So have the ambition, but let God guide you and help you to grow in that regard. Grow in patience in everything, whether we're in line at the grocery store or whether you are waiting for this next thing to happen. In either way, if you grow your patience, again, with self-control, you will grow and you will be patient and see God's goodness unfold. Again, accepting difficulty. Don't put your head in the sand like this guy. It's really important that we actively cope and face problems head on, and towards the end I will show you exactly how to kind of problem solve. But this leads to, as you problem solve, it will lead to an increased level of competence. Your muscles grow, right? Marathon runners don't run a marathon the first time that idea pops in their head. And so what ends up happening is we grow in trying to practice and exercise little by little and expand our cardio and all these things, and then we can run the marathon. So this leads to an increased amount of competence and mastery over our situation. Another thing that we often talk about that kind of matches in science and in faith is the acceptance of difficulty. In psychology, we call this acceptance. In faith, we call it, anybody know? Surrender, right? And so oftentimes we have to surrender to God's will. Accepting does not mean that this is okay that this has happened. It just means that you understand that this is happening, and I have to maneuver around it. I have to be flexible. I have to be adaptable. I have to learn. So life is very worthy to live, even when things are difficult, because we have the ability to accept, to acknowledge that this has happened, and that I can grow around the difficulty. Again, the purpose is to grow around that difficulty, to grow even when things are dry around us, they're not perfect, they're not, going as well as we hope, and yet we can be resilient in the struggle. Resilience is like a rubber band. We can stretch around those struggles. And I love this quote as well, is that she stood in the storm, and when the wind did not blow her way, she adjusted her sails. You could just give up, and then the boat would capsize and we'd be done, right? But we want to adjust our sails and work with the wind rather than fight against it. So I showed this in the last segment, but again, we want to make connections, avoid seeing the crisis as insurmountable, accept that change is part of life. There's nothing that is going to stay the same always. It's going to change. And when it does, we need to make new goals, take decisive action, look for opportunities of self-discovery, nurture a positive self-view, maintain a hopeful perspective and outlook, and take care of yourself as you go through those things. Again, we want to practice gratitude, we want to practice altruism, we want to use those 10 positive emotions, and we want to savor. And savoring, again, is about building positive emotions, building resilience, and sensing the things that are around us. So if you wanted to break the word savor down a little bit, you want to slow down and have a sense of what is going on around you. You want to appreciate the small things that are around you. Like I said, in a couple of weeks, we'll see, blossoms and flowers and things on the trees. Take a second and appreciate how beautiful those things are. Increase that image in your mind and open your heart to learn about the things that are around you and also to rest. We also want to encourage one another and build one another up with advice, with help, with support, with tips, with guidance, with assistance. That is definitely part of my initiative for this new El Roy that is part of Care Resilience, is to give people as much help and support and guidance as I can using this science of resilience in that regard. Again, here are the 24 character strengths. You can pick out which ones, again, family members or you have, and which of the fruit of the Spirit you are utilizing in this moment as well. We don't want to discount the importance of praying. Never stop praying. The Bible tells us to pray without ceasing. And this allows us to always have Christ's will in the middle of everything that we're doing so that we can be illuminated as to his will. Because again, when we go our own way, things go awry and things fall apart and things don't go according to plan. So go according with prayers and with patience. And remember that the blessings are to come. There are blessings that are still coming because all things work together for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Again, we are to balance the many different areas of our life. We talked about those in the last segment as well. Take time to pause. Take time to have the areas of your life and see where your needs are. Prioritize those needs, because oftentimes we're trying to do 100 things all at the same time. So when you prioritize your needs, you are able to examine what are the important areas that we have with our families and what areas need to be fixed first. Resist fear. That doesn't mean that fear doesn't exist. All right, it means that God is with us. Yes, we should see what is making us pause when there are moments of anxiety and fear, but also knowing that God is good. God's goodness is going to put us in the right place, that we are going to accept the circumstances that he gives us and not to doubt his care. Why? Because he is sovereign. He is sovereign, and so everything has to go through him, and whatever we are experiencing can be a test, or it can be something to help us to grow. There are all kinds of gratitude journals out there if you don't know what to be grateful for or what to be thankful for. There are lots of prompts that you can find to take even a 25-day gratitude challenge to start being more closely intentional and mindful about things in your environment so that you can be thankful for them, because again, thankfulness shifts our perspective from what is not going well to what is going well. And again, there's journals that you can find and things that you can buy that can prompt these things. But it could be even anything small. I'm thankful for a food that I love that I was able to have this week. Thank you, Lord, for this meal. Thank you that I'm able to taste this meal. Thank you for my freedom. Thank you for my good friend. I had a good conversation with a friend. I'm so thankful for that. Thank you for sending me sunshine. It makes me happy. It makes me warm, right? So nothing is too silly, quote unquote, to thank God for. It truly shifts our perspective. And again, hope. I love the acronym for HOPE. It is hold on, pain ends. And it does end. Sometimes when we're in the thick of it, it feels like it will never end, right? And if we are in a very serious crisis, we're not supposed to minimize that. But knowing that God is the God of our hope and that He will free us from all iniquities and redeem us as He redeemed Israel. I love this very next slide because this is really important. We talked about purpose in the last talk, and this is really important as well. It's a funny word, but it's a brilliant concept out of Japan. It's called Ikigai, okay? And basically it is finding the things that you are passionate about. Because again, having passion and having purpose drives us forward. So do the things that you're passionate about. Find out what they are. And so the intersection of Ikigai is doing things that you love, doing things that the world needs, a service of some sort, doing things that you are good at, strengths, we've heard of those, right, today? Doing things that we are good at, and doing things that you can be paid for, because you obviously need to keep the lights on and pay your bills and feed your family. If you could find the intersection of those, you will find what you're passionate about, your mission, your vocation, and your profession. And in the intersection of that, it is Ikigai, which is our purpose. So in addition to utilizing our strengths, where can we apply it to this? Because that's going to be really helpful and important to helping us to find our purpose. Know yourself and God's promises. Verse from Jeremiah here, that He has plans for us to prosper and to give us hope and to give us a future. And even Aristotle, long before positive psychology was a formal science, said that knowing ourselves is the beginning of wisdom. Because if I know myself, I know where my blind spots are, I know where my triggers are, what it helps me, what doesn't help me, where my strengths are, where my weaknesses are. It is important to know myself. Do I know myself well? I showed this to the group from last night. And are we clear about what we want from our lives? Because oftentimes we want to build a relationship with someone else without knowing ourselves well. And that's going to create some issues. So do we have a sense of purpose? Do we know how to achieve our goals? Do we know what defines you? Do you know what makes us happy, joyful, fulfilled, and have meaning? Because ultimately, the entire purpose of life is to have a life of purpose. So we keep going back to the importance of purpose for mental health, to know what God's plans are for us. Why is He giving us the 10, 5, or 1 talent? What are we doing with those talents? The purpose of life is a life of purpose. And so it is important to know ourselves and to know others in our family, develop a relationship, develop a friendship, and then together, iron sharpens iron, and we grow together in Christ. But we have to know ourselves first. People are afraid to know themselves. I can say that even clinically. They're afraid to go in deep, and so they often hide themselves from others, from themselves. They don't want to face the barriers and don't want to face the struggles and don't want to face the challenges. And they may even be lacking in things like self-love or self-esteem. They may be afraid of criticism from other people. And they may not have enough downtime to process the things about themselves. So it is important to face ourselves first and foremost, not to feel guilt and shame, but to understand ourselves. Where do these triggers come from? How can I embark on using my strengths if I don't know who I am? And where those strengths came from, how they benefited me, and where the weaknesses come from, and how they have also served me, believe it or not. We want to recognize our strengths, recognize our weakness, know our core values, and also find inspiration and support from other people. And so it is important to self-reflect, to make sense of things in our life, to break down where the problems have been, to track progress, to look for patterns, and to increase our self-awareness and self-acceptance. After we really have that self-awareness, we can truly start to grow emotional intelligence, which includes 4 parts. If we want to be self-aware, again, we're looking at our strengths, we're looking at our weaknesses, we're looking at all of those different arenas, and then we have to self-regulate. Where are there challenges with our emotions, regulating our emotions, regulating ourselves? only when we've done those two parts for ourselves, then we can be empathetic towards other people, understand other people, and then have social skills that will help us to bridge the gaps between us and others. So first, know yourself. It's the beginning of wisdom. Know your strengths, know your talents, know your weaknesses, know where you apply them. Do a very deep, good search on yourself. Regulate your emotions, then be empathetic towards others and build bridges of communication. Now, there has been research also on resilience with 7 C's of resilience, and I'll add an 8th one, which is communication. The 7 C's of resilience help our children to grow. We can build these in our kids. We can build these in ourselves. I'm going to talk about each one so we can talk about it for a little bit here. But we're going to grow our competence. That means we're going to grow our skill set, right? We're going to grow those strengths and talents. And so, they are very competent and growing in their skills and their knowledge. Give them as much knowledge and growth and information as they need to develop that skill set and their strengths. And do not simply rescue them. Obviously, if they're involved in something dangerous, you are going to rescue them. But if it's a process where they can grow and learn from it, let them grow and learn, right? So, when they're riding a bike for the first time, or even when they're walking, babies fall and they get back up and they learn how to walk again. They learn how to manage their balance and they learn better, right? We don't rescue every time. Obviously, if it's dangerous or something scary or something, not beneficial, then obviously we will stop them. But just know that we learn sometimes from even large failures, believe it or not. We also want to build their confidence level, help them to recover from challenges rather than hide from the challenge. Go face it, go ask a question, go talk to your teacher, go talk to that other child. Focus on your strengths, focus on using those positive emotions, help them to set realistic goals. I'll talk more about that on the next slide, and help them to learn from every mistake, especially the big ones, so that they can improve moving forward. Help them to step out of their comfort zone, which we've heard a couple times today already, and help them to increase self-care so they don't burn themselves out. We have something called SMART goals. Anybody ever hear of these before? SMART goals are about being very specific goals. The goals have to be measurable, right? I'm not going to take my grade from like a 40% to 100%, but I want to move it incrementally up in measurable amounts. It has to be attainable so that you don't burn out or lose self-esteem trying. It has to be relevant to your life, right? You could be 12 years old and you want to be an astronaut, but it's not really relevant to how you're running your life currently, right? So it has to be relevant as well. And it has to be time-bound. If you don't put a deadline on your goals, everything else will take its place and you won't work towards it, all right? So set a deadline for yourself. If you need to move it small movements, but don't leave it open-ended. We've talked about connection already. Loneliness is an epidemic worldwide, and researchers and scientists have said serious loneliness, somebody again not seeing us, not hearing us, not feeling us, can be as bad as smoking and drinking for like heart disease and liver disease and all of these things. So loneliness is a problem, and all these kids are in their devices all day long, so we need to foster greater connection, all right? You can do that through service, you can do that with community service, you can do that with service in church, like the older kids today may be serving younger kids, that kind of thing, but finding ways to connect with others is important, really, really important. Building their character, build their integrity, build them a value system that they can turn to. Help others. I can still remember the values that my parents taught me when I was younger, and that value system has truly carried me through life, even in the most difficult of times, most challenging of times. So their character being built is permanent. That's really, really important as well. Again, how do you contribute to the world? What are you giving back to the world? How are you putting something into the world, not just taking? Again, where do I feel a sense of purpose and gratitude? How do I cope with my challenges? Again, with resilience. That's really, really important. And that's where we're going to spend the rest of our time here today. is to be able to survive and to thrive during difficulties and challenges. One of the best way to build these 7 C's is an 8th C. And that 8th C is communication. Choose your words carefully. Words hurt. I said this last night to the group last night. Choose your words carefully. They can really injure even if you're trying to mean well. Okay? Listen to what you're about to say before you say it. Don't say things in moments of anger or frustration, or if you're tired or stressed or frustrated with them. Kids can be frustrating sometimes, right? They're not listening. They're disobedient, just sometimes. So they'll push your buttons. They know exactly where the button is, and they'll keep pushing it. But I tell my kids sometimes, the elevator doesn't come any faster when you keep pushing the button. Anyway, so choose the words carefully. Use nonverbal cues that are pleasant and warm. Listening skills are important. And build communication. Here are some hallmarks of communication that you can use. I won't go through all of these, but a key one that I want to say is, should adults apologize to kids? What do we think?
Yes.
Raise your hands for yes. Awesome. That's what I like to see. A lot of times parents want to say, nope, I'm the parent here, I'm not apologizing. First of all, you're modeling how to apologize, all right? Showing that you're also human and make mistakes, and that they're valuable enough that you're going to apologize to them if you make a mistake. And tell them how you're going to correct moving forward, right? Maybe I was too strict or too difficult in the situation, or I was too tired, I didn't answer correctly. Apologize, okay? If you need a break before you respond, please take a break before you respond rather than break someone accidentally or on purpose when you're upset. And we're going to talk about more of these in a few minutes. Active listening, all right? Make sure that you're not rushing through conversations that need your time and energy and effort. Concentrate. Sit down with them. Take them on one-on-one time. Make eye contact. Put the phones away in that one-on-one time. Understand before responding. This is like rule 101 of therapy. Understand before you respond. In fact, we tell people to listen to understand, not listen to respond. Really, really important. Respond with understanding. So understand, then respond, and respond with understanding. All right? Always understand first. Remember what is being communicated. Remember the need to be seen and to have purpose at all times. And this is crucial for resilience. You want to be assertive in your parenting, not aggressive, and not passive either, okay? You don't want to be a permissive parent where you just give in all the time, or a neglectful parent. A neglectful parent has no rules and no love. A permissive parent has too much love and not enough rules. An authoritarian parent has lots of rules and no love. They're more like a dictator. The kind of parent we want to be is a respectful, non-aggressive, non-passive parent that talks about things calmly, but also has a lot of expectations. This is called authoritative parenting. These are parents that are very involved with their kids. They have lots of rules. Do your homework, do your chores, be kind to your siblings, be kind to us, give back. Lots of expectations, lots of rules, but they have lots of love as well. And they have lots of respect for their parents and others. These parents are firm, but they explain things. They listen to their kids and make sure that their kids listen to them. They discipline, meaning guidance, molding, not punish. Punish is punitive and breaks people. And they give them enough room for autonomy, but with self-control. These are the kids that grow up the best and are most respectful and are most successful according to research. Think about this in your families. How do you handle disagreements? Do you keep arguing back and forth, bickering back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with no resolution? Or do you let everybody talk and you come up with a plan together? That's how it should be. Respect everyone's needs and everyone's feelings. Be constructive, not destructive. Maintain trust with each other and set ground rules and boundaries of things to not ever be crossed. Boundaries are important, even within families, because the first thing that we do in families is lax our boundaries, and then somebody feels stepped on or hurt or upset or things like that. It seems to be resonating with some people. Okay, make sure Make sure that you're picking the right time and place. I tell this to families all the time, kids that I work with and everything like that. Find the right time and place. The right time and place for communication is not when your parent walks in the door. I should go tell that to the kids in the next room. As soon as the parent walks in the door, everybody wants to unload 10 years worth of problems right at the door after you've had a 10, 15-hour day. That is not the time and place. Set a time and place and talk about those issues. Make sure that you make the time for it, but make sure the time and place is right. Because if you're tired or angry from something at work, that is not the time to unload on somebody else. So choose the right time and place where you can be calm and focused. Don't argue in public places. That's a rule for all my families that I work with. Do not argue at Panera or at Starbucks or at the mall. Leave it for home or someplace private and secure. Take a break, cool off. I know we're not supposed to let the sun go down on our wrath, but that doesn't mean argue when you're angry, right? Find a time where you can cool off and come back to it. And don't leave in the middle of an argument without telling the other person when you're going to come back. Okay, that's a problem too, especially with kids. They may feel abandoned if you do that. So if you're going to leave, say, I will be back at this time, and stick to your word. Have regular family meetings where you come together, get on the same page, establish clarity, talk about logistics, get things off your mind so that they don't build up. Have regular meetings, different than family recreation times. Don't bring the meetings into the recreational time. Don't bring the recreational time into the meetings. Just like at a meeting for work, it's not your company potluck, right? The meeting at work is to get on the same page. You can have the potluck another time. Identity and focus on the problem, because oftentimes we're all over the place. So just like at work, you have an agenda. Figure out what the problem is that you want to solve and solve that problem. Get on an agenda and figure out that agenda and work on it. And then focus on the real problems, the unmet needs, things that are not addressed, who's not being seen, where can we compromise, where can we apply more autonomy and independence, where can we lead by example more as parents. Focus on deeper issues. Who felt hurt this week? Who felt upset from something that somebody else did and we brushed it under the rug because we were rushing? Talk about those issues so that they don't build up. Again, we're emphasizing connection. We're emphasizing autonomy, independence, and growth. And again, we are focusing on a million other resilience ideas that we can talk about. Just wanted to show you all real quick a couple definitions that I have for resilience. This is my own personal definition that I've come up with all my years of research and work in this area, is that resilience is not the absence of any difficulty, right? We're not sticking our head in the sand and pretending our families, they don't have problems. But instead, resilience is the conscious choice to experience the full spectrum of human emotions, to not be consumed by them, and to thrive despite them. About 20 years ago, I conducted one of my first studies on resilience, and this is a model I came up with. You can see how complex it is from a scientific perspective, because it's truly an interaction of the person, their personality, the impact of whatever difficulty and challenge they are going through. And there's a whole research study that's been published on this particular model that I can share if you guys wish. But basically, because everybody is so unique, the unique impact of whatever the challenge is on their mind, on their psyche, along with whatever specific tools and strengths they have, they mingle together and we fall on a continuum of resilience. And that continuum can fluctuate through time, right? There are times where you can go through something incredibly serious and feel on the lower end of resilience. Other times you can be using all those strengths, all those coping skills, and come out on the stronger side. But on that sheet that you all have, there is a simpler version, which is adaptability, flexibility, and learning. And actually your sheet has this exact image where I put some of the most important hallmarks of resilience, as well as an acronym for resilience, because if you couldn't tell, I love acronyms. And they all have different words for each letter of the word resilience. And the 7 C's from Ginsberg work that goes all the way back to 2005 as well. My model also goes back to 2005, but it's been cited in a lot of places since then. If we do this, we can be resilient on all fronts: our physical, mental, psychological, and emotional, and spiritual health. can all be impacted by our resilience. And with kids, it's important, very important to see that they have a very strong, stable, and consistent relationship with you, right? You are the ambassadors to Christ on earth, so is the church, but in a week, how much are they spending in church versus school versus their friends versus with you, right? And as they get older, the time with you may dwindle, but they need to have a strong connection to you. You are the anchor, and you are their role model. And again, I still remember things that my dad told me 35, 36 years ago, and I still carry them with me. So it is important to be grounded, them to be grounded in you. Label your emotions with them and theirs. Do not rush to fix. Problem solve instead. Be creative in your problem solving. Create meaning wherever you go. Ask them where they have grown. If you don't see a silver lining in this problem, how have you grown? Even if it was a mistake or a failure, how have you grown? What coping skills are you using to grow? And there are some pretty healthy kind of coping skills that are out there as well. To problem solve, analyze the situation carefully and generate a list of solutions for that problem. Generate a list. Evaluate your list. See which one works for everybody. See which one works best for your kid's strength. And then apply and implement a plan using your strengths and that solution that you came up with. And then here's the one that people forget. They forget to come back and reevaluate. Did what we talk about work? Did it not work? Did you use your strengths? Did you not use your strengths? Were there weaknesses that came up that you need to address? So that's how you work on solving a problem. We've talked about savoring already. Again, here's some ways to do that, to journal, to take a picture, to visualize. But again, the more that you savor, the more that you bank those positive memories in your mind, and you can utilize them again in a difficult and challenging time. Important things to remember, 3 rules for you as parents. What you do matters. It does matter. You may think that you're talking to a wall and they're not listening, especially when they're middle schoolers and high schoolers, and I'm going to talk to them tomorrow too, to listen to their parents, just like I'm telling you to also listen to your kids. But what you do does matter. And what you adapt, you have to adapt yourself, your parenting, to each child. And again, not paint all your kids with one paintbrush. They have different strengths. They have different talents that God has given to each of them. He's passed them all out. And we've been given different strengths in different orders. So we have to adapt our parenting to each child. And lastly, we have to treat each child with respect. All right, and this may be something that was not done in the past, or kids were seen but not heard. It's a two-way street. It truly is. And the more that you treat them with respect, they're learning how to respect others, and they will respect you back. Okay? And they will know the limitations of where to stop, the upper limits of where to stop. So, most fervently in a war room of prayer for my strong-willed child, it is that the Lord will get a hold of his or her life and not let them go. Some positive coping skills, there's a million of these, but just some ones to throw out there. Meditating, praying, making sure to talk with family and friends and a counselor or a priest. Journaling and art is a really good expressive way for the creative kids. Accepting rather than bottling emotions, accepting and then acting. Allow our children to cry. Crying is not a weakness. Please let me say that again. Crying is not a weakness, boys or girls. It is an expression of emotion, of something that hurts. And if we're in any doubt, a very powerful verse is only 2 words: Jesus wept. Okay? So allow yourself to cry. It is cleansing, it is powerful, and it's really important. Be assertive, not aggressive. Use positive self-talk. Handle problems as they come so they don't accumulate. Handle your own anger appropriately before dealing with your children. Exercise, take a walk off your anger and then come back and deal with it. Create a soundtrack of hymns or songs for your emotions, and count to 3 before reacting. And then some people tell me, but I can't change my circumstances. What do I do? I love this quote from Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor and wrote one of the most powerful books, Man's Search for Meaning, about purpose. If you've ever have not read that book, I highly recommend it. It was instrumental in me creating this career for myself early on. an excellent book called Man's Search for Meaning. But he basically says when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Change your mindset, change your ideas, change your planning, and you will be able to raise very resilient kids. I showed this earlier, but again, it's about gratitude, knowing their strengths, savoring, using positive emotions, examining their story of resilience and yours, and using kindness. Last thing I want to show is another Japanese principle. I studied Japan in college, so I love their culture and their language. I studied it for about a year in college, which was really interesting. And this is the first time that I came across that was when I was in college, a million years ago. But basically, kintsugi is an art form in Japan where they take broken pottery and they don't throw it away. Instead, they repair it with gold. And the symbolism behind that is that we are not destroyed when we are broken, right? We instead are more valuable, more precious, and stronger in those areas where we have been broken. So no matter what your child does or has or is, just like Christ is patient with us and God is patient with us, we can come back from it even stronger, even more valuable, even more precious than we were before because we have been broken. And we are redeemable and usable and even more beautiful. Again, it is never too early or too late to start. God is guiding you. You're not doing this alone. We are in a community. Alone, we're a single drop. Together, we are like an ocean that is very powerful. And so all we have to do is take that first step and start. Thank you. And again, Care Resilience and Elroy to help you out whenever you need the help.
Thank you so much, Christine and Dr. Agaibi. What we're going to do now is instead of breaking, we're going to do spiritual songs with Patty, and then we'll go right into the workshop.
Can we ask questions?
At the end.
And I'm sticking around afterwards as well.
We're gonna take a micro break. Just stand up right where you are. Stand up, move your body. And I want you to tell the person next to you one thing you're gonna do this week in action that you're gonna do that's related to something she spoke to us about today. I'm gonna tell my kids 3 strengths I think they have.
I like that one.
I didn't hear this. Say that again.
I'm gonna tell my kids 3 strengths that they have.
Oh. I'm gonna freeze and bring all this.
Dinner? Yeah, it's very minimal. It's very, 1 minute long
Right, yeah, you're not doing this, not doing that. Did you hear this?
Okay, good.
Later on.
Okay, you may have a seat. Take 5 seconds to finish up your thoughts. We are going to do the same 2 songs from earlier, but without the music this time. Okay, I'd love for active participation again. You guys did a great job last time, right? No eye has seen another God like you, who opens the jails and shatters the chains. No eye has seen another God like you, who opens the jails and shatters the chains, who parts the sea, and behold, there's a path no mountains or barriers can
could appear in the flames or rescue a soul from the lion's den. Who else but you could appear in the flames or rescue a soul from the lion's den? Who lights the way when the darkness comes with a blaze of love in a pillar of smoke? No eye has seen another God like you. No eye has seen another God like you. Who else but you went to Calvary? Who else paid my debts, carried my iniquities? Who else but you went to Calvary? Who else paid my debts, carried my iniquities? And you promise me you're coming very soon to take me to heaven for eternity. No eye has seen another God like you. No eye has seen another God like you. Dear precious Jesus, on a very high mountain, retreat with me and hear my prayer. Oh, my Lord Jesus, your love has freed me. I praise you with my heart, honoring your glory. My heart was lifted towards his holy place. How I long to be there, to witness his radiant face. Dear precious Jesus, on a very high mountain, retreat with me and hear my prayer. Jesus, the King of peace, on his throne he reigns, his garments white as snow, his eyes like a flame. I fell at his feet in fear and reverence. My heart was overwhelmed by his glorious presence. Dear precious Jesus, on a very high mountain, retreat with me and hear my prayer. He came to me and laid his pure hands on me. I looked at him and asked, my Lord, how could this be? I am weak and sinful, his mercy upon me.
He smiled and gently spoke, "My child, don't be afraid. I am the Lord your God. Your debts I have paid. In weakness you came to me, seeking to repent and live. I'll always love you. Your sins I shall forgive. Dear precious Jesus, on a very high mountain, retreat with me and hear my prayer.
So now we'll go right into the workshop, but just again, and I'm so sorry because we do have this tiny time constraint. We have, the pantry is coming at 3, so we were gonna end before 3 also anyway, so nothing changed. But yeah, we'll stay till 3, but if we need to move rooms, we might have to, which is okay too. What we'll do, instead of breaking out into separate groups, what we'll do is go over the workshop questions together, if that's okay with you, Christine. And we'll do it as a group together. So whoever has a question, please use the mic.
Oh, sure.
So we can either address
Yeah, I
these,
did
or I
have a
guess
question.
people can ask questions too, that works.
Right, can you dwell a little bit on you said, do be authoritative, but not
Authoritarian.
authoritarian. Can you
Yes.
dwell a little bit on that? And especially for us who came a little, I don't wanna say old, but we were born and raised in a different environment, and we deal with our kids in a different way, and we struggle with, being authoritative versus being.
Authoritarian, yeah. So it's basically about the amount of love and rules, and an authoritarian parent is more like a dictator. It's about lots and lots and lots of rules, but not enough love or understanding, remember, is an important key word as well. That I have to understand their position as well, even if it's different from my position. Like you said, coming from a different country, how to organize and understand what their perspective is. So it's about understanding. But in an authoritative parent, you have a lot of rules. The rules are there, and expectations. You're gonna do well in school, you're gonna serve your community, serve others, be supportive of your siblings, be respectful, lots of those expectations. But at the same time, I love you, that you have a place to come and ask questions, a soft place to land when the world is hard, or even when the world is not hard. And so from that perspective, you are showing them your love, not just saying that you love them, right? You're showing it, but also you still have a lot of expectations as well. And again, research tells us those are the kids that grow up the best, because they're able to explore, but they know where the parameters are, where the limitations are. When you have too much rules and not enough love, then you get some rebellion, you get some, I'm gonna do what I want, I'm gonna have my autonomy. So this kind of helps with that perspective, because they can explore, but they know they can communicate with you, but they know where the limitations are. Of course. Good question.
You earlier talked about knowing the self. So what are some tools that I could use to really know myself, and how to balance, or in another way, what is the relation between knowing ourselves is the beginning of all wisdom and fearing God is the beginning of all wisdom?
Yes, so very good question. To know yourself, you really have to face the areas that you don't want to go to on a regular basis, right? So sometimes you need help with that. You can go to your father of confession, you can go to a therapist to help you. Sometimes we don't know ourselves, and we really need to examine the areas that are damaged, or areas that have been hurt in some way, or areas where there are triggers. and to do so in a safe space, like under the guise of a Buna or a counselor or therapist that is trained. They can help you to kind of get to know yourself a little bit better in that regard. The other perspective is knowing God, obviously, and asking God for wisdom will also help you to know yourself, right? So knowing God and becoming close in reading the Bible, knowing what God's character is, again, asking a priest, specifically in that role, for guidance with questions is really, really important. So that you don't start thinking about it from your own perspective, but you're thinking about it with the guidance of the Holy Spirit through a priest. But asking and knowing God will help you to know yourself as well. But again, not put your head in the sand, and facing the things that sometimes hurt in a safe environment, in a loving environment, will help you to deal with some of those things and to face those issues that are hard to face. Of course.
I have a question. Oh, sorry. I'll come to you. But it reminds me of the question you had up before about balancing support and accountability.
Yeah.
What do you do when a non-negotiable rule that you have sort of established as a family is broken, or like a general way to approach it?
Mhm. So like a boundary has been broken? Like a boundary has been broken, or
I don't know that
something
it's a
different?
boundary, or more like, let's say like an action or a life choice that completely goes against
Mhm.
what, the way we would like to,
Mhm.
you know, the things we'd like to do in our family.
A boundary is different than something like that. A boundary
Yeah.
is broken is something that needs to be discussed more clearly and maybe addressed in a more serious way. But even in those cases, in any case really, we can't change the other person, we can change what we do. So even with a boundary, we would say, if this continues, I'm going to do this, kind of thing. But even in this case, if it's out of our hands, we can only, pray for that person and show them how this may not be the right path, and keep showing them that this isn't the right path, especially if it's your kids and you're worried about them. But especially if they're adult kids, it's harder to tell them what to do,
Of course.
right? When they're minors, you can tell them what to do to some extent, right? But when they're adults, you're gonna have to just pray for them and trust that they've learned the right ways from you, and with time that will be revealed. And that maybe prodigal sons can return and do the right thing. But God is the one who changes hearts.
How do you label your emotions?
Use, let me go back to that circle.
That wheel.
Yep, start with the simple emotions first in the center, and then branch out, if I can find it here. Branch out to the ones that are on the outside. Start with the very simple emotions in the middle, right? So you got mad, scared, joyful, powerful, peaceful, and sad. And then from that, you can, extrapolate a little bit deeper onto some of the other emotions, so you can articulate exactly what you're feeling.
Sorry, I saw another.
So
I saw another one that said that there was positive emotions and then negative emotions, and then it split off into more from that. And I thought that was the more. I don't know. That's the one that makes more sense to me.
Okay. Think of emotions more as data. What is this trying to tell me? What need am I trying to fulfill? Like for fear, for example, maybe I should pause here. If I'm angry, again, there's some sort of injustice happening that I need to treat. So what information is this trying to tell me? What data is this trying to give me? And that will help. I think I saw your question, yeah.
Yeah. One of the slides you had something about 3 positive experiences for 1 negative experience for a kid, and there's research around that. So it's viewed, just some more clarity on this, it's viewed from their perspective, and what are some things, and as parents we're kind of I want to take credit for putting them in a positive experience, but they might not see that as a positive experience with the parent. So how do we foster those positive experiences as parents?
So there's been some walk back from that number. Actually, it's there's some more recent research that just talks about understanding the negative and the positive experience for what it is. Even if it's a negative experience, let's say they failed a test completely and they feel miserable. What have we learned from this situation, right? So not every situation is necessarily going to be positive, and that's why there's been some walk back from those numbers. But it is important to see how I can kind of improve that moving forward. Did I learn something from this? Maybe I spent all last week with my friends instead of studying. So I learned now if there's an exam that I need to take, then I need to study a little bit more and put some more effort into it, and I can't just coast to get the score that I want, right? So I've learned something even from that failure, even if it's not positive. Oftentimes the negativity bias that we have is we continue to spiral after that. And that's what we want to pause and instead turn that into a reframing, a learning, an adaptability, flexibility, and then that's where growth and resilience happens. Yes?
Can I just add some stuff that you were talking about? So with Patty's question, sometimes you have to reevaluate. So even though it's non-negotiable, well, if it's continuing to happen, have a discussion with who it is and reevaluate the situation. Maybe your expectation is too high, or something is going on it's not kind of realistic. The other thing, he was asking about the authoritarian and authoritative, and the way to show love is to also show weakness as a parent. So in my house, sometimes I yell, so I teach my kids, part of prayer is like, hey, let's pray for mommy to be more patient, to not to yell. And then explaining that to the kids too, like, hey, mommy was frustrated, but doesn't mean I don't love you, I always love you, it's just sometimes I have a moment.
Absolutely, and in those cases, it identifies emotions as well. That's an added bonus. This is what frustration looks like. This is what apologies look like. You're modeling. Excellent points.
I have one question. We have a mother's meeting, and this was kind of a hot topic about not punishing your children, but when, like what Patty mentioned, if somebody's crossed the line or did something that was, in fact, you do need to punish them, it was wrong, right? I know this is different for different age groups. Obviously, like a 3-year-old, you're going to punish them differently than a 10-year-old. But what is kind of the best way to handle a situation like that, where you do need punishment, but what is the appropriate form of punishment? Of course, this is going to be different for every age range.
It's different for every age range and also what's acceptable for that particular family. We generally use the word discipline because you are guiding and teaching, not just being punitive, right? So it's about guidance at the end of the day. So it has to be a learning experience. And there sometimes could be a natural consequence. You know, a 16-year-old that you told not to drive fast, for example, they're going to get a natural consequence of a ticket. And then maybe they have to pay the ticket, right? So that's a natural consequence. And there's others. You forget your gloves after I told you 1,000 times you're going to be cold in the winter. That's a natural consequence. Not to the point where they're being harmed, obviously. But throughout that process, you're not withdrawing your love. That's the most important thing. You are guiding, that's why the word discipline is so important. You are guiding, you are showing them the right way, you are showing them the right path, and they are learning from their mistakes. There can be consequences for things, natural or otherwise. You can take, things away that are meaningful, whether it's devices or maybe you just don't go to this event or something like that. But it's not meant to be punitive where you break them, right? It's supposed to always be a learning experience.
If there aren't any questions right now, we could go back to those workshop questions that you had on the screen. Is this the last thing we're doing before 3? Or whatever time we're ending? We're gonna take a picture, okay. So allow at least 10 minutes for that, I think.
I think there is a wrap up tomorrow after the meeting with them.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to share their thoughts on any of these questions, feel free to make intense eye contact with me or raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone.
I sometimes find it challenging when I'm trying to communicate with the children about something that either didn't do correctly or maybe that they need to learn, and where to draw the line between their skills, their abilities, and what I want them to learn. So, sometimes I try to show them, here, let's do this together. And they're like, Dad, you're fussing too much about this, or you're thinking too much about it. So obviously each kid will have different abilities. They may not all be able to do what I would hope them to learn. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so just also know that children's brains are growing and that it will continue to grow until their mid-20s, believe it or not. So we've got a long time of growth, so that may be why they're not able to plan well or execute what you're trying to tell them to do, and then they say they'll do it and then they forget 2 minutes later. So memory's still growing, their brain is still developing, and that it's all in the frontal lobe, which is the kind of executive functioning part of the brain. So their impulsivity and all those things. So being aware of their strengths and abilities could be around the certain ages that they're experiencing. But again, notice where their strengths are. Maybe they like to empty the dishwasher, but another kid likes to vacuum. So you push those strengths, but also teach them vice versa what the other one is doing well so that they can do it too. And you're just explaining that these are skills that maybe they're going to use later on in their future. And that your perspective may be different than theirs, and try to understand what their perspective is, but they also have to learn what your perspective is as well. So a mutual thing.
Yeah, I think also sometimes, I could be wrong, but I think they're too focused on what they really love to the point that nothing else matters. So.
And you want to teach a broad range of skills. So that's where the strength is, but and sometimes things have to be repeated, which is where parents get frustrated. But it's also important to keep repeating it until it sticks. Eventually it does stick, but again, they're not always processing what you're telling them. Frontal lobe is not fully developed, unfortunately, and sometimes that's a big struggle for families. But maybe some small incentives here and there. You turn on the fan, you get a small incentive that may help. But definitely explaining why it's important is also important.
Well, can you get them to like sit back here? That's what I do.
To do what?
Get them to say it back here. Like,
Oh,
what
say
they
it
Yeah,
back.
that's helpful too. Mirroring it, yeah.
I find that it's very easy to shame children, even without realizing you're doing that.
Yeah.
Even if it's encouragement, sometimes it can be very shaming. Is there
Absolutely.
anything that you can add to that?
Yeah, so again, we're looking at strengths here. So instead of taking it from the perspective of what you're doing wrong, to look at what they're doing right, and then applying that to what they're doing wrong, right? So you were able to do this correctly. I noticed you did this correctly for the last week. Can we try to apply it, the same thing over here? And say like what we were talking about a minute ago, which is to broaden what they already know. Not just to know how to clean a fish tank, but to know how to handle a lot of other chores in the house as well. Eventually, one day you're going to have your own home. You need to know how to do this, and practicing is what's important. So explaining the reasoning behind it, not that I just want you to do A, B, C, and D, and that's it, is important also. But yes, be careful of our words. Be careful of our, where we're going with that. It's really important. Anybody want to answer any of these? Anyone applying any strengths in their lives?
I'm learning a new strength, or I'm edifying my existing strength of self-regulation.
Okay.
And it's making a significant impact on the other members of my family. My husband always says that once my nostrils are flaring, that means I'm upset. And I explained to him that I'm taking a deep breath.
That's a good reframe.
It is a good modeling for my children who might struggle with self-regulation as well.
It's something we can all grow in, I'm sure, and it's good that you're recognizing, again, knowing yourself in order to be able to change things. We can't change things if we don't know that they're an issue. But a talk for another day would be the stages of change and where we all are in those stages, and how we can move through them. But at least awareness is the first stage.
Lent is a good time to do
that. Yes, absolutely.
Every day is a good time.
Anybody using their strengths with faith in order to solve problems and issues?
Yeah, to that question is like always striving to do what God, like Jesus did, right? So he was forgiving. So instead of, again, like, maybe a strength is like not act on emotions, but being logic, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of like, okay, I can feel it, but I have to go to logic thinking, and I think using your faith leads you to the, like, you know, the right way, not the earthly way.
Absolutely. Very good perspective. Looking long-term.
I don't want to burn my sermon for tomorrow, but Jesus did that with the Samaritan woman. He was, that's very.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of learned that parenting is, part of it is struggling and carrying the cross. And sometimes it becomes a very heavy cross. Even it looks very light on the surface, but it is carrying the cross. But I do have a follow-up question. We grew up that kids respect their parents. You talked about parents respect their kids. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on how we can do that?
Just modeling for them the right behavior, talking to them in a respectful way, understanding that they may have an opinion or a different perspective, and appreciating that and listening to it and hearing it, just those kinds of things as well. And that creates a good communication, good understanding, good conversation. You get to understand them, they get to understand you, and you can come from that place to, you know, fix things and heal things. Not just be, you know, just told what to do and they're not, you know, being heard at the same time. So it's about hearing them, speaking to them respectfully, using the right words, using the right tone, using the right volume, all those different things.
I remember growing up telling my dad that it's illogical to tell someone else not to feel a certain way, right? You can communicate about what went wrong and what I did and what you did, but the feeling is, it's there, right? You can't, and now that I'm a parent and I have children, I'm trying to keep that in mind, that they may have feelings that have transpired through some experience. I can't ignore that or invalidate it. I have to kind of help them bridge the gap.
Absolutely, absolutely. Their feelings matter, and we should validate feelings always, whoever that person is that we're talking with, and then go from there.
But can I add something to this, or ask a question?
So what if the child that is feeling all these feelings are going a little bit too far in their feelings, and we want to help them kind of regulate their feelings, and so I don't want to minimize what they're feeling, but at the same time, if I give too much into it, it's going to be amplified, and then they kind of lose control.
Yeah.
There's like a fine line.
Right, so you validate the emotion, but you help them to regulate also not only the emotion, but the behavior that comes from it. So if you're mad about something, for example, you can't just throw a chair because you're angry, right? You have to talk through that. What is making you angry? What is making you upset? And even if it's not in that moment, let's come back to it in an hour or so when everybody's calm and you've thought it through a little bit, and then we'll address it then. But sometimes the actions, yes, are too much, and we need to rein that in. And yes, it's important to regulate your emotions. You can't have a meltdown, you know, out in public or whatever. You need to regulate that, you know, breathe and take a deep breath and think about what you're saying and put some space between the trigger and your actions and your words. All of those things are important.
How does one know if something you say is gonna trigger someone?
If you know them well, you'll know if it's gonna trigger them. You should know their boundaries as well, but you're also not responsible for how they react to something, especially if you're doing it unintentionally. If you're intentionally pushing their buttons, that's not a good thing, right? But you don't know just walking around who you might trigger and who you might not trigger, and so they're responsible to regulate themselves. You could be just talking to somebody for the first time, and something that you say could trigger them, because it's something from their past. So you're not responsible for that, but if you're intentionally triggering somebody, that's a different story.
What's a good structure for family meetings? That's something that we don't do. And it's something that I remember from my childhood. Actually, they didn't call family meetings, but my parents were really good about every day we had dinner together.
Mhm.
Every day there was this passing on of values that I remember, like you remember things from your dad.
Yeah.
That I don't, we're eating, standing up in between activities, running. We're not having that communal time.
Yeah, absolutely, that communal time is important, and again, it may be different than the recreational time, like vacations or day trips or whatever it is. But the structure of the family meetings is everybody needs to be heard, their issues need to be brought to the table, no matter how small or how big you are, because they could be experiencing things in school, and especially when they're in school full-time, we're not with them in school full-time. So that is a time to bring up things that they're experiencing in school, maybe that they're dealing with, or things that they need to logistically figure out. And you put that on the list of things that you're gonna cover, and then you cover it and try to implement a change moving forward. And like you said, passing down of values, when something comes up that you see as, that has become problematic, or something where you can infuse things like integrity or honesty or loyalty or any things like that, put it in there and talk about those topics, which is important as well. But that is separate than family recreational time. Just go to the movies and relax. That is very different than a family meeting where you're instilling those values and dealing with logistics. Again, a vacation is different as well. Those are just for relaxing and bonding.
Can I ask a question, kind of not related to what we said today, but related to like the family dynamics? Do you have any resource that can give me insight on like introducing of electronics and cell phones to like teens and preteens? And
I could look up some resources for you. Just send me an email or something. I'll email you back some resources, the list that I give to parents that can be helpful in that regard. Yeah.
Mike.
You're really getting in your steps today.
How does one speak facts if the other person hears them as assigning blame rather than facts?
Yes, great question. This came up last night with young adults, and we said that there's a formula, a very simple formula, but it's effective, which is when this happens, I feel this. That's one of the best ways to kind of effectively, talk about your feelings without the other person becoming defensive. Again, they should be in control of their own emotions and hear you out, and we can talk about that. But you can say, when whatever it is situation happens, I feel this way. So the way I often example I give is, let's say I had a couple clients once where one spouse would hang up on the other when they were frustrated. So the other one would say, when you hang up the phone, I feel abandoned, I feel disrespected. So you're coming at it from your emotions rather than saying something like, how dare you hang up on me, which would inflame